The arrival of the alien girl on a quiet morning under a gray sky. The ground of the human colony shook lightly. People looked up from their work, confused. Something was coming. A low hum filled the air, growing louder with every second. Out. On the fields, a large spaceship appeared through the clouds. It was unlike anything the humans had seen before. Smooth and silver, shaped almost like a teardrop. It floated down gently. Dust rose around it as it landed softly outside the town limits. Children ran to the windows. Workers dropped their tools. The mayor and a few guards rushed toward the landing site, unsure if they should welcome or fight whatever was arriving. The ship's door opened with a soft hiss. Out stepped a girl. At first there was silence. People squinted their eyes, trying to understand what they were seeing. The girl was tall but very thin, her skin a soft shade of blue, almost glowing. Her hair was silver and fell around her shoulders like river water. Her eyes were large, too, large for a human face, and they shone like stars. Her clothes were simple, a robe made of smooth, strange material. Someone gasped. A child started crying. A woman pulled her son close and whispered, "Stay away from it." The girl stood still at the entrance of her ship, holding something small in her hand, a simple white flower like a peace offering. She stepped forward slowly, carefully, her bare feet touching the dusty ground. She looked around with hopeful eyes, searching for a friendly face, but there were none. The crowd grew restless. Whispers turned into laughter. Someone muttered, "What an ugly thing." Another said louder, "She looks like a mistake." The girl heard every word. Her shoulders dropped a little, but she kept walking. Her eyes, once bright with hope, dimmed with sadness. She tried to smile, but it was small and shaky. Nobody stepped forward to welcome her. No one offered a hand. Even the mayor, who had practiced speeches for new visitors, stayed silent. Fear and judgment filled the air, heavier than smoke. A boy threw a small rock. It bounced near her feet. The girl stopped walking. She looked at the stone, then at the boy. She said nothing, only gave a sad, slow blink. Some adults chuckled. Others just turned away, pretending not to see. The girl understood. She wasn't welcome. Silently, she sat down near her ship, placing the white flower gently on the ground beside her. She folded her arms around her knees and rested her chin on them. She watched the humans from a distance, the way a lost puppy might watch a busy road. Hours passed. No one approached her. The ship behind her stayed quiet, offering no backup, no support. It was clear she was alone, maybe by choice, maybe not. Nobody knew. As the sun began to set, painting the sky orange and purple, the colony returned to normal life. Workers went back to their duties. Children were called inside. The guards relaxed but kept one eye open, just in case. Only one person stayed behind, hiding behind a broken wall. A young man named Daniel. Daniel had watched everything. He had seen the way the girl's face lit up when she first stepped out, and how it slowly died with every cruel word. Something inside him twisted, and a feeling he couldn't name. Pity, sadness, anger. He didn't know yet. He just knew that when he looked at her, he didn't see something ugly. He saw someone lost, someone alone, someone who maybe, just maybe, needed a friend. But he didn't move yet. He stayed hidden, thinking. What could he do? If he stepped out, he might become the next joke. People might laugh at him too. They might call him crazy or worse. Fear held him back, but so did something else. Something stronger. Curiosity. Daniel wanted to know why she was here, who she was, why she carried that flower, and why, after being treated so badly, she didn't fight back. She just sat there, quietly, like she was used to being hurt. As darkness fell over the colony and cold winds began to blow, the girl shivered but stayed where she was. The flower beside her, now wilted, seemed to reflect her spirit. Daniel made a silent promise to himself. Tomorrow, he thought, I'll talk to her, no matter what anyone says. He turned and walked away, leaving the lonely girl under the stars, unaware that her life, and his, was about to change forever. The cold welcome, the next morning, a thick fog covered the colony. The streets were empty and silent, as if the town itself was holding its breath. Only a few workers moved around, their heads down, their steps quick. In the distance, near the edge of the town, the alien girl still sat by her ship. She hadn't moved much through the night. Her silver hair was wet from the dew, her blue skin pale under the weak morning sun. The white flower she had brought was now crushed under her hand, forgotten. From behind closed doors and curtained windows, the humans watched her. "Why is she still here?" one man whispered. "Maybe she's planning something," a woman answered nervously. Rumors began to spread like wildfire. Some said she was a spy. Others said she was cursed. A few even believed she could bring sickness with a single touch. Nobody thought to ask her. Nobody thought to listen. Children, curious but cruel, gathered at the edge of the market square. They pointed at her, laughing behind their hands. One brave boy threw another stone, this time hitting her shoulder. She flinched but didn't cry out. She simply lowered her head as if expecting it. A group of teenagers dared each other to get closer. One of them, a tall boy with a mean smile, marched up to her, waving a stick. "Go away, monster," he shouted. The girl looked up at him, her eyes calm, but deeply sad. She said something soft in her own language, a sound like wind through trees, but the boy only laughed and pushed her back. She stumbled but stayed on her feet. Daniel watched from a distance, his hands clenched into fists. He wanted to step in, to shout at them, to protect her, but fear tied him down like heavy chains. He wasn't strong enough yet. The mayor finally arrived, his face serious. He stood before the girl, keeping a wide space between them. With cold, heavy words, he told her that she could not stay near the town. She was a risk, a stranger, a problem they didn't want. He pointed to a small hill outside the colony walls. "If you must stay," he said, "stay there, away from us." The girl understood. Even without speaking their language perfectly, she knew what rejection looked like. She nodded once, picked up her crushed flower, and walked slowly toward the lonely hill. Her ship remained where it was, empty and silent. A ghost of her past. Life, the humans watched her go with mixed feelings, some satisfied, some uneasy, some already forgetting her. But Daniel couldn't forget. He couldn't shake the image of her small, broken figure walking alone toward nowhere. Later that day, while the town went back to its busy life, Daniel made a decision. He would go to her. Not tomorrow, not later. Today. He waited until the sky turned gold with the setting sun. Then, hiding a piece of bread and a bottle of water inside his jacket, he left the colony walls and headed for the hill. The walk was quiet but heavy. Every step felt like a choice. A choice to do what was right or what was easy. As he climbed the hill, he saw her sitting by a twisted old tree, her head resting on her knees. She looked smaller now, almost fragile. Like if the wind blew too hard, she would simply disappear. Daniel's heart pounded in his chest. He stepped closer, carefully. "Hello," he said, his voice soft and unsure. The girl lifted her head slowly. Her eyes, big and shining, locked onto his. For a moment, neither moved. The world seemed to freeze around them. Daniel held out the bread and water awkwardly. "I thought, maybe you are hungry," he said. The girl stared at the food, then at him. She didn't take it right away. Her hands stayed in her lap, as if she didn't trust that the offer was real. Daniel smiled a little, trying to show he meant no harm. After a long, painful pause, she reached out and took the bread with trembling fingers. She brought it close to her face, sniffed it carefully, and then slowly she took a small bite. Daniel sat down on the ground a few feet away, giving her space. "My name is Daniel," he said. "Daniel." He pointed to himself when he said it, hoping she would understand. The girl watched him with cautious eyes. Then, in a voice so soft he barely heard it, she spoke a name. "Liara." Daniel smiled wider. "Liara," he repeated. The girl's lips twitched. Not quite a smile, but not sadness either. Something in between. Something growing. They sat there for a long time, sharing quiet and bread as the stars blinked into life above them. But somewhere beyond the hill, in the dark streets of the colony, angry eyes were watching. Not everyone was happy to see Daniel break the unspoken rule. Danger was growing, and neither Daniel nor Liara knew how soon it would find them. The human who noticed the next morning, Daniel woke up with a heavy feeling in his chest. He had dreamed of Liara, not in words or clear pictures, but in emotions. Loneliness, fear, hope. They wrapped around his heart like cold vines. As he dressed for work, Daniel thought about what he had done. He had broken the invisible rule of the colony. Stay away from outsiders, from dangers, from things you don't understand. But he didn't regret it. On his way through the town, Daniel could feel the stares. People looked at him differently now. Whispers followed him like shadows. He talked to the alien. One woman hissed to another. He gave her food. A man grunted. What if he brings trouble to us all? Daniel ignored them. He had already made his choice. Later that afternoon, while stacking crates near the market square, Daniel saw a small group gathered around something, or someone. He moved closer and felt his stomach twist into a hard knot. They had found Liara. She was standing in the middle of the square, clutching a small bundle of wildflowers she must have picked near the hills. Her eyes were wide, her body stiff with fear. Someone had painted cruel words on the walls behind her. Monster. Go home. Ugly. Children circled her, throwing small stones again. Their parents stood nearby laughing or saying nothing at all. Daniel's fists clenched. He dropped the crate and pushed through the crowd. When he reached her, he stood between Liara and the others, his arms out like a shield. Stop it, he said, his voice shaking with anger. Leave her alone. The laughter died. The crowd went silent. Liara looked up at him, her silver hair catching the weak sunlight, her blue skin marked with dust and sadness. For a moment, no one moved. Then slowly, people began to back away, muttering under their breath. Fear of the unknown was one thing. Fear of someone willing to fight for it was another. Daniel turned to Liara and knelt down, picking up the flowers she had dropped. He held them out to her. These are beautiful, he said softly. Her hands trembled as she took the flowers back, holding them close to her chest like a precious treasure. Thank you, she whispered, her voice like a breeze after a long storm. Daniel smiled, and for the first time Liara smiled back, a real, small, glowing smile. It lit up her face in a way that no human beauty ever could, but unseen by both of them. A shadow moved away from the crowd. A man with a long coat and cold eyes, the mayor's assistant. He walked quickly, disappearing into the maze of narrow streets. He had seen enough. That night, Daniel couldn't sleep. He sat by his window, looking up at the stars, wondering what kind of world Liara had come from. Did she have a family? Was she running from something? Or had she been sent here, alone on purpose? He had so many questions, and he knew she had even more fears. He decided he would visit her again tomorrow, no matter what. But as he sat there, lost in thought, a quiet knock came at his door. Daniel tensed. Who would visit him this late? He opened the door a crack and found a small boy standing there, his eyes wide with fear. They're coming, the boy whispered. They're planning something bad, for her, and for you. Before Daniel could ask more, the boy ran off into the night. Daniel's heart pounded. He didn't know who they were, but he knew one thing. He had to reach Liara before they did. Without wasting another second, he grabbed his jacket, some supplies, and sprinted toward the hills. The town was different at night. Cold. Dangerous. Shadows seemed to stretch longer. Noises sounded sharper. Every step he took echoed like a drumbeat in his ears. When he reached the hills, he saw her, a small blue figure curled under the old twisted tree, sleeping quietly. He slowed down, his heart aching at the sight. But he wasn't alone. In the darkness, he spotted them, a group of men creeping up the hill. Torches in their hands, ropes, heavy boots crunching the dirt. They were coming for her. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. He had no time to think, no time to plan, only time to act. He raced forward, calling out her name. "Liara, wake up!" She stirred, blinking in confusion. "Run!" he shouted. Liara stood up, her eyes wide with fear. She looked behind Daniel and saw the angry faces climbing the hill. Without hesitation, she grabbed Daniel's hand. Together they ran into the night. The torches chased after them, lighting up the dark fields like angry stars. But Daniel didn't look back. He tightened his grip on Liara's hand and pulled her toward the woods. Somewhere deep inside, he knew. This was only the beginning. The first words of kindness. The forest swallowed them quickly. Daniel and Liara ran through the thick trees, dodging low branches and jumping over twisted roots. Behind them, angry shouts and the glow of torches painted the night with fear. Daniel didn't know where he was going. He only knew they had to get away. Liara ran beside him, her bare feet barely making a sound on the forest floor. Even in her fear, she moved with a strange, natural grace. But Daniel could feel her hand trembling. In his, they ran until their lungs burned and their legs felt heavy. Only when the shouts faded into the distance did Daniel slow down, pulling Liara behind a large fallen tree. Both of them dropped to the ground, gasping for breath. The forest was dark and silent now, except for their heavy breathing. Shadows danced across their faces. The cold night air wrapped around them like a warning. Daniel turned to her. "Are you okay?" he whispered. Liara nodded weakly. Her silver hair was messy, her blue skin scratched in places from the branches. She looked tired, scared, lost. Daniel's heart twisted again. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice breaking a little. "I'm sorry for what they did. You didn't deserve any of it." Liara tilted her head, trying to understand his words. Slowly, carefully, she placed a hand on his chest right over his heart and said a single word in her language. Daniel didn't understand it, but he felt it. It meant something like trust. Or maybe hope. They sat there for a few minutes, catching their breath. Daniel looked up at the stars shining through the cracks in the trees. So many stars. So much universe. Yet somehow, two lost beings had found each other here, on this forgotten planet. He turned back to Liara. "You are not a monster," he said firmly. "You're beautiful." Liara blinked, confused at first. No one had ever said that word to her, not even back where she came from. Beauty was a human thing, an idea that judged by faces and bodies. Where she came from, worth was measured by kindness, by the light you gave to others. But even by human standards, Daniel saw something in her that no one else did. Strength, gentleness, true beauty. A tear rolled down Liara's cheek. She wiped it away quickly, embarrassed. Daniel smiled gently. "It's okay to cry," he said. "It means your heart is still strong." Liara's lips trembled. She opened her mouth, trying to form human words. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice rough but clear. Daniel felt something deep inside him shift, like a door opening to a new world. They sat in silence for a while, listening to the forest breathe around them. But the danger wasn't over. Far away, a horn sounded, sharp and cruel. Daniel stiffened. They were searching for them. "We have to move," he said, standing up quickly. He looked around. The forest was too open here, too easy to find. He needed a better place to hide. Somewhere deeper. Somewhere safe. He reached out his hand. "Come with me," he said. Liara hesitated for a second, then placed her small blue hand in his. Daniel led her deeper into the forest, following a faint trail only he could see. A trail he used as a boy when he wanted to escape the world. After what felt like hours, they reached an old abandoned mining tunnel hidden in the side of a hill. The entrance was covered with vines and rocks. No one came here anymore. "This will keep us safe for now," Daniel said. They squeezed through the vines and into the tunnel. It was dark and cold inside, but it felt safer than the open forest. Daniel lit a small light he kept in his jacket. The soft glow lit up the rough stone walls. Liara looked around, amazed. She had never seen anything like it. Daniel found an old blanket and wrapped it around her shoulders. She shivered and smiled weakly. They sat down against the wall side by side. "Why did you come here?" Daniel asked softly. Liara looked down at her hands, thinking hard. Then in broken words she tried to explain. "Home. Gone," she said. "Bad. People. Destroy." Daniel's eyes widened. He listened carefully as she continued in simple words and gestures. Her planet had been attacked. Her people scattered. She had escaped in the only ship left, hoping to find safety, hoping to find kindness. But instead, she had found fear, hate, loneliness. Daniel swallowed hard. "Not here," he said firmly. "Not anymore. I'll protect you." Liara looked at him, her eyes wide with wonder. No one had ever promised her that before. Outside, the forest grew darker. The searchers moved further away, missing their trail completely. For now they were safe. But deep inside the colony, the mayor was already planning his next move. And this time, he wouldn't just send men with torches. He would send something much worse. Daniel didn't know it yet, but the real battle was still ahead, and he and Liara would have to stand together, or lose everything. The gift of friendship. For the next few days, Daniel and Liara stayed hidden inside the old mining tunnel. Outside, the world searched for them. Patrols roamed the forest. The mayor had promised a reward to anyone who captured the alien girl, and anyone who helped her. Daniel knew he was risking everything by staying with her. But somehow it didn't matter anymore. Every morning, he would sneak into the colony while the town still slept. He stole food from his own kitchen, water from the public wells, blankets from the old storage rooms. He brought them back to Liara without anyone noticing. Each time he returned to the tunnel, he found her waiting for him with a small smile, a smile that made the danger feel worth it. In those quiet days, something special began to grow between them. Friendship. Trust. Under Daniel's guidance, Liara started learning simple human words. She learned how to say thank you, friend, and safe. In return, Liara taught Daniel small pieces of her own language, strange, beautiful sounds that filled the dark tunnel with warmth. They shared stories using broken words and wild gestures. Daniel told her about Earth, blue oceans, tall mountains, crowded cities full of lights. Liara told him about her home world, floating gardens, singing winds, rivers that glowed under twin moons. Sometimes they laughed so hard that Daniel forgot they were hiding, forgot they were being hunted. One evening, as the sun melted into the horizon, Daniel brought her something special. A bag of seeds. He had found them in an old storage crate near the abandoned greenhouse. Most people had forgotten about them. But Daniel remembered how his mother used to say, "Where flowers grow, hope follows." He showed the seeds to Liara, smiling. "Let's make something together," he said. Liara tilted her head, curious. Daniel led her outside, deep into a hidden part of the forest where the sunlight still reached the ground. The earth was rich and soft here. Together they dug small holes with their hands. They planted the seeds carefully, covering them with soil. Liara sang in her own language, a soft, humming song full of longing and love. Daniel didn't understand the words, but he felt the meaning deep in his chest. After planting the last seed, they sat side by side, covered in dirt, watching the sky turn purple and gold. Liara looked at Daniel and placed her hand gently over his. "Family," she said softly, struggling with the human word. Daniel blinked, his throat tight. No one had ever called him family before, not even after his real family had left the colony years ago. He smiled and nodded. "Family," he agreed. For the first time in his life, Daniel felt he belonged. But happiness doesn't stay hidden for long. One night, as Daniel sneaked back into town for supplies, he noticed something strange. The colony was too quiet, too still. Then he saw them. New guards wearing black armor, patrolling the streets. Heavy machines parked near the gates. Strange, floating drones buzzing through the air. The mayor had called for help from the central government. They had sent enforcers, men trained to find and capture anything that threatened human settlements. Daniel's blood turned cold. If they found Liara, they wouldn't just scare her away. They would destroy her. And if they found him helping her, they would destroy him too. Daniel slipped through the shadows, stealing what he could, and raced back to the tunnel. He found Liara waiting, humming softly to the seedlings they had planted. He grabbed her shoulders, panic in his voice. "We have to leave," he said. "Now." Liara's eyes widened. She didn't ask why. She trusted him. They packed what little they had and disappeared into the deeper parts of the forest, leaving behind the seeds, the tunnel, and the tiny home they had built together. As they moved through the darkness, Daniel looked back once and at the hidden garden they had created. It wasn't much yet, just a patch of dirt and hope. But he promised himself, someday, somehow, they would see those flowers bloom together. And no army in the universe could take that away from them. But the world was changing faster than Daniel could imagine. The enforcers were not the only ones hunting them now. Something far older, far deadlier, had been awakened by Liara's arrival, and it was coming. The jealous ones strike deep in the forest. Daniel and Liara moved quietly through the trees. They had left their little garden behind, left the tunnel, left everything safe and familiar. But there was no choice. The enforcers were hunting them, and worse, some people from the colony, jealous, angry people, wanted to see them suffer. At first, Daniel thought the forest would keep them hidden. But he was wrong. The mayor's assistant, a man named Mr. Vance, had his own reasons for wanting Liara captured. Pride, power, jealousy. He had watched Daniel's growing friendship with Liara with a twisted kind of anger. He hated that someone could see beauty in something so different, something so strange. And now, he was making his own plans. Plans that would not just end with Liara's capture, they would destroy her completely. Daniel and Liara found an abandoned cabin deep in the woods. It was broken and forgotten, but it offered shelter. They patched up the holes with old wood. They made small fires at night, careful to hide the smoke. They built a new life, piece by fragile piece, and for a short time they found peace again. Daniel taught Liara more human words. She learned how to say hope, safe, and strong. In return, Liara showed Daniel strange skills from her world, how to heal small wounds with simple herbs, how to listen to the sounds of trees, how to feel when danger was close. Daniel began to believe they could survive, maybe even live freely one day. But one night, as they sat outside the cabin watching the stars, Liara suddenly stiffened. Her ears twitched, her eyes narrowed. Danger. Daniel felt it too, a sharp prickling on the back of his neck. Before he could move, the forest around them exploded with light. Torches, shouts, heavy boots crushing the undergrowth. They were surrounded, not just by enforcers, but by townspeople too. Men and women from the colony, carrying ropes, nets, weapons. Daniel's heart sank as he recognized some faces, people he had grown up with, people he had trusted. And there, at the front of the mob, stood Mr. Vance, smiling coldly. "There she is," he shouted. "The monster who tricked one of our own." The crowd roared in anger. Liara pressed closer to Daniel, fear in her glowing eyes. Daniel stepped forward, his hands raised. "She's not a monster," he shouted. "She's kind. She's done nothing wrong." But his voice was lost in the noise. Someone threw a net. It missed. Someone fired a stun gun. It sizzled past Daniel's ear and hit a tree, sending sparks flying. "Run," Daniel whispered to Liara. But she didn't move. She wouldn't leave him. And Daniel realized in that moment he couldn't leave her either. Together they turned and ran toward the back of the cabin, crashing through the trees. Shouts followed them. Heavy footsteps pounded behind. A net brushed past Daniel's face, almost trapping him. He ducked low, pulling Liara with him. They raced through the darkness, hearts hammering, lungs burning, but they couldn't outrun the betrayal. In the clearing ahead, more villagers waited, blocking the path. It was a trap. Daniel skidded to a halt, pulling Liara behind him. They were trapped. Mr. Vance stepped out from the trees, holding a strange device, something glowing with a dangerous red light. "Enough games," he sneered. "She belongs to us now." Daniel shook his head, anger blazing in his chest. "She belongs to no one." He stood tall, shielding Liara with his body. The crowd closed in. The device in Mr. Vance's hand hummed louder. It wasn't just a weapon. It was something else, something meant to hurt. Liara cried out softly, a painful sound, as the device's energy touched her skin. She stumbled, her legs giving out. Daniel caught her, holding her close. "Stop," he screamed. "You're killing her." But the crowd didn't care. They only saw a threat, only saw their fear, only saw their hate. Daniel's mind raced. He had to do something, anything. He thought about the seeds they had planted, the small patch of hope. And suddenly, an idea sparked in his mind. A desperate, crazy idea. He whispered into Liara's ear. She nodded weakly. Together they took a deep breath. Then Daniel stood up, facing the mob. "You want to see what a real monster looks like?" he shouted. The crowd paused, confused. Behind Daniel, Liara closed her eyes and began to hum, a low, deep sound that vibrated through the ground. The plants around them shivered. The trees bent slightly toward the clearing. From the earth, tiny green shoots burst upward, growing faster than nature should allow. Vines slithered across the ground, wrapping around the villagers' feet. Roots cracked the earth, grabbing ankles, tripping attackers. Screams filled the air. Panic broke the mob apart. Daniel grabbed Liara's hand and pulled her through the chaos. They ran again, deeper into the wild woods, leaving the screaming, tangled villagers behind. They didn't stop until the forest swallowed them whole. When they finally collapsed under a giant oak, gasping for air, Daniel laughed. A wild, tired, amazed laugh. Liara smiled weakly. "Strong," she whispered. Daniel nodded. Strong together. But far away, deep in the heart of the colony, Mr. Vance was already plotting his next move. This time, he would bring something even worse than ropes and nets. Something from the old wars. Something that could destroy more than just a single life. The fight was far from over, and the true test of Daniel and Liara's bond was still to come. True beauty revealed the next few days were not easy. Daniel and Liara hid deeper in the forest, living on berries, stolen supplies, and hope. They moved carefully, always listening for the buzz of drones or the distant crack of human footsteps. They knew the colony wouldn't stop hunting them, especially now, especially after what happened in the clearing. Daniel worried constantly. He worried about food, about safety, about Liara's health. She was strong, but even he could see she was getting weaker. The energy she had used to protect them had drained her, but Liara never complained. Each night they sat together under the stars, sharing stories in broken words, laughing at silly things, building small moments of peace inside a world full of fear. Still, deep inside, Daniel knew they couldn't run forever, and he was right. One evening, just as the sun was bleeding into the trees, the forest shook with a low, distant roar. Not footsteps, not drones. Something bigger. Daniel and Liara climbed a small ridge and looked down. Their hearts sank. Rolling toward the forest was a machine, a war relic from the old battles between humans and other species. A heavy crawler, its metal legs crushing trees, its cannons aimed to kill. Atop the crawler stood Mr. Vance, wrapped in black armor, his face twisted with hate. This was not a search anymore. This was war. Daniel turned to Liara. "We have to stop them," he said. Liara looked at him with tired eyes. "Fight?" she asked. Daniel nodded. "Fight." Liara hesitated, then smiled faintly. She placed a hand over his heart. Together. They raced through the woods, moving fast and quiet. Daniel knew there was no winning against the crawler with weapons, but maybe they didn't need weapons. Maybe they needed something more powerful, something humans had forgotten. Hope. As the crawler crushed deeper into the forest, Daniel and Liara led it carefully, guiding it toward the place they had once called their secret garden, the place where they had planted seeds of hope, the place where the earth itself remembered kindness. The crawler followed them blindly, tearing through the trees. Villagers marched behind it, shouting, carrying torches, nets, weapons, and finally they reached the garden. Only now, it wasn't just dirt and seeds anymore. It was a miracle. The seeds had grown, faster than nature should allow. Strange, beautiful flowers filled the clearing, glowing softly in the twilight. Vines curled around broken trees. Colorful blossoms floated in the air like living lights. It was a place of peace, a place of life. And the humans, for a moment, hesitated. Even Mr. Vance paused, staring at the impossible beauty before him, but only for a moment. He raised his arm and shouted, "Destroy it!" The crawler whirred louder, targeting the garden. Daniel stepped forward, standing between the crawler and the flowers. "No!" he shouted. "This is what you are afraid of? Life? Beauty? Kindness?" Mr. Vance sneered. "It's a trick," he yelled. "They poison our world with their lies." Daniel shook his head. "No, you poison it with your fear." He turned to the villagers. "Look around you," he cried. "This is what she brings. Not death, not danger. Life." For a moment, silence hung in the air. Then, slowly the people began to see. They saw the flowers, the vines, the glowing lights. They saw Liara standing beside Daniel, not as a monster, but as something pure and true. Some of them lowered their weapons. Some of them stepped back in shame. But Mr. Vance was too far gone. He screamed in rage and slammed his hand down on the crawler's control panel. The crawler's cannons powered up, aiming straight at Daniel and Liara. Time seemed to slow. Daniel grabbed Liara's hand. "Trust me," he whispered. Together they knelt down, placing their hands on the soft earth. They closed their eyes. They didn't fight with guns. They didn't fight with fear. They fought with hope. The ground trembled under them. The garden answered their call. Vines exploded from the soil, wrapping around the crawler's legs, pulling it down. Flowers bloomed wildly across its metal skin, jamming gears, blinding sensors. The machine groaned and collapsed, powerless. Mr. Vance screamed as he was thrown from the wreck, landing hard in the dirt. The villagers watched in awe. They had seen machines win wars. But today, they saw kindness win. Later, when the fires died and the stars returned, the colony gathered around the garden. Daniel stood with Liara at the center. The mayor, humbled and ashamed, stepped forward. He cleared his throat awkwardly. "We were wrong," he said quietly. "We judged with fear, instead of seeing with our hearts." He looked at Liara, and for the first time he bowed his head in respect. The villagers followed. One by one, they laid down their weapons. One by one, they planted new seeds in the garden. A new beginning. Daniel turned to Liara, his heart full. "You saved us," he said. Liara smiled, a tear shining in her bright eyes. "No," she whispered. "We saved each other." And under the starlight, surrounded by growing life and blooming hope, they finally understood. True beauty was never in faces. True beauty was in hearts that dared to see it. And together, Daniel and Liara built a future where kindness was stronger than fear, and where no one, alien or human, would ever be called a monster again. Not in their home, not in their world, not ever again.